Hi, everybody. How are you? Happy Monday. I hope everyone had a wonderful weekend and is enjoying the beautiful weather and wherever you are. Um, so, today, what I want to talk about is weight loss and food addiction. And I want to share with you um, sort of my personal journey and kind of my view from kind of a from the medical side. So the first thing I want to say is that in our in medicine, we really don't know an effing thing about dieting. We don't. We don't really know what diets are helpful for long-term weight loss. Um, there's some research out there certainly that says the Mediterranean diet is the best diet for cardiovascular disease and diabetes. Um, but we really don't know. And the reason why I say that is because there hasn't been enough long-term studies on any of these diets, and that really what would determine a successful diet is having long-term weight loss, right? And keeping that weight off for quite a significant time. And what that time frame usually is that people need to keep off that weight for at least 1 to 2 years. And certainly there's a lot of diets out there where people can drop, a significant amount of weight in a short time, but they're not sustainable. They're not sustainable from a lifestyle change. And so lots of people, I mean, in healthcare, we say to people, it has to be a lifestyle change and yada yada. And it was always embarrassing to me as a healthcare provider that, I would comment on someone's weight as someone who was obese. Somebody who was 80 pounds heavier than what I am now. But not be able to give them a solution, right? Not confidently be able to give them tools to help them lose weight. And so it was embarrassing. It was really awkward for me to say that because I struggled with my own weight. And I knew how hard that was. And so, over the last 2 years, I've been on my own personal weight loss journey. And I've lost 80 pounds. And that took me a year to do that. And so the last year I've been in this body and trying to maintain that. And the program that I found was really a program that was based on a 12-step food addiction model, but actually was a scientist, so a professor of neurobiology, who understood the 12-step food addiction model and the strict boundaries that provided, but wanted to prove and use research to kind of understand why it worked. And that was really compelling to me because as a healthcare provider, I'm a scientist and I do like data. I just am not great at fads. But also I was desperate. I needed something that I could understand. I didn't understand why I was failing because I am successful in a lot of aspects of my life, but I was failing my own health. And that was really frustrating for me because, I had done much harder things in my life and been quite successful, but I couldn't manage to lose weight and keep it off. I was like most people, January 1st, you clean up your diet, you start exercising 3 to 4 times a week. And, by February, I would be, exhausted and, the willpower would have had run out and I would just give up, right? I was a kind of an all or nothing mentality. If I couldn't do it perfectly, I wouldn't do it at all. Or I would do it really good from Monday to Thursday and then have my cheat night and then, be off the rails Monday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and regain any of the weight that I would have lost from Monday to Thursday. And when I found this program, originally, I didn't think that I had a food addiction. Talking about having a food addiction is really uncomfortable for me because people laugh at me when I say that I have a food addiction, because, that's silly. I think, food addiction is something that is not on our radars as healthcare providers. Obviously, food addiction or, food addiction, specifically anorexia or binging and purging, which is known as bulimia, are very common. Those are things that stick out. But we don't really acknowledge food addiction, and we don't ask people about food addiction, and we don't diagnose people with food addiction. And so, to be honest, as a provider, it wasn't even on my radar that I might have a food addiction. And so I started this program, and it was a great prescription. It told me exactly what I needed to eat. It validated why I had been failing, why I was always hungry and constantly having cravings. And it gave really good clinical evidence with really rigorous clinical trials that linked the addictive properties of sugar and flour, so ground white substances that basically trigger the same aspects of our brain, so increase our happy hormone dopamine, that cocaine does. So that was something I could get on board with, right? I understood that. I got that from a clinical sense. And as I detoxed from sugar and flour, and as I started to see and start to heal my brain, I realized those addictive behaviors of how I used to abuse food and abuse myself, what those trends were. And that was really eye-opening for me, because it became less about food and more about healing my emotional and mental self. It became a journey of unconditional self-love and self-compassion, because we are imperfect beings. And the reality is staying abstinent or sober 100% from sugar and flour is something that's very, very difficult to do. And it is very difficult to do for a multitude of reasons. One, our entire society is riddled with it. My family, my husband and my daughter don't eat the way that I do, so I'm exposed. And, if you're traveling, which I've done a lot of traveling throughout the world on this particular food plan, and it becomes very, very difficult. It's also difficult because you have to, I was a self-professed emotional eater, which is a really nice way to say that you're a food addict, right? And, now that I reflect, the things that I've learned is that in general, I don't do well with moderation, right? And regardless of whether that's food, I can't bake a cake and have it in my house because I can't have one piece. I will eat it until it's gone. And that perpetuates eating other things. And so, what makes me a food addict is that I can't have moderation. It doesn't work for me. I've tried it. It doesn't work. That I continue to eat even though that I'm full. I eat to really suppress emotion. And so I use food as a way to self-soothe emotion. And when we think about addiction, whether it's alcohol or drugs, really it's a way to numb ourselves, right? It's a substance that we're using to self-medicate. And whether that substance is alcohol or drugs or food, it basically has the same results. And so throughout this journey, I realized that I was. And in order to be successful, you really have to surrender to that, because you end up having to grieve the loss of sugar and flour. I had to grieve the loss of not being able to cook Christmas cookies, which was something that I did as a way to show love. I had to grieve the way that I celebrated holidays. It wasn't around food, it was around connection. I had to, grieve the loss of that myself. I mean, my weight, that 80 pounds was really my armor. It was a protection. It was a way that allowed me not to take up space in this world and not be seen. And, the journey was, it's difficult, and it's still difficult. And so, I could talk on and on, but I want this video to be short. But it's a hard thing for me to talk about because I have not, overcome it. I struggle with my addiction every single day. And I'm in a rough patch. I've been in a rough patch for a couple of months. And part of it is that I've lost that ability to surrender. My brain and ego is playing tricks on me, trying to justify that I can learn to be an eater who can have moderation. And that, I should be able to have a piece of cake on my 40th birthday, or I should be able to go to a nice restaurant with my friends and not worry about what I'm eating. But the reality is I've done the real life experiments and I fail miserably every time. And what I realize is I end up binging on those things. And then when I think about what those triggers are, what causes me to do that, it tends to be fatigue and stress. But anytime I have a food craving, it's automatically related to me having an uncomfortable emotion that I don't want to feel. And so the first thing that comes up for me is food cravings. It's not the feeling, it's not the emotion. So this maladaptive behavior started when I was very, very young. I remember the first time that I started using food as comfort, and I was about 6 or 7 years old. We had just moved, and I didn't have any friends, and we were kind of isolated. We moved to a smaller town. We lived out of town. My mom went from a stay-at-home mom to working, where I didn't see her. And so I remember vividly going through the cupboards and eating whatever I could find. Probably for comfort, but also from boredom. And so I eat whether I'm happy or I'm sad, or whether I'm, celebrating stuff. And so, the thing from a clinical point of view, when we think about what we do know in the medical world, what we do know about weight loss is that you choose a program and it's a lifestyle change and you're consistent and you don't make exceptions. There's no exceptions for Fridays. There's no exceptions for someone's birthday. There's no exceptions for the potluck or the barbecue. There's no exceptions because it's a long weekend. There's no exceptions because it's you had a promotion or a bad day or a holiday, because when you add those things up, those exceptions happen weekly or every other day. The other thing is that what we know is that what people who food journal, who write down their food, are much more successful at weight loss. So whether you write it down or put it in something in MyFitnessPal, people consume less calories because they actually have to think about it. The other thing that we know is that people who are successful at just abstinence from any substance, people who have some sort of a spiritual practice, such as like gratitude is a big thing. So doing gratitude journals, and doing an inspirational reading daily, those things are really important because that helps you to stay on track. The other thing that makes people successful is having a really big supportive network of people who you can lean on. And the last thing is that you're not relying on willpower. So the biggest kind of thing that goofs us all up, especially when it's New Year's Day and we're all going back on the bandwagon and we're going to lose some weight and we're going to be thin the next New Year, is because we white knuckle it and we rely on willpower. And you need to rely on automaticity. And in order to avoid relying on willpower, you have to do meal planning. You need to have very strict boundaries around food. And so for me, those very strict boundaries are I eat 3 meals a day. I do not snack. I do not eat sugar and flour, and I weigh out my food. I weigh and measure my food because my brain is broken. It will always tell me I can eat more regardless of what's on my plate. I never feel full, and I never feel satisfied. And so that's another trigger when you think about, am I a food addict? Are you completely unsatiated? And what's really interesting is that I've been really thinking about this, about being unsatiated with food, and I realized that unsatiated in other aspects of my life, right? In that, I have a pretty amazing job, but I feel like I can do more and I should do more and I should, climb this proverbial ladder, right? That, my biggest fear is I'll amount to nothing in my life. And so I'm always craving personal growth, professional growth, relationship growth. I'm always trying to be better, right? I'm never satisfied with where I'm actually at. And that's a really interesting, right? It's really interesting how our addiction can be seen in other aspects of our life. So, previously I was talking about moderation. I can't have moderation with food, but there's other aspects of my life where I can't have moderation either, right? I'm a workaholic. I don't have really good boundaries with my work. I work a lot. So I guess I ask you about, can you have moderation in your life? Do you feel satisfied with food? Do you have, constant cravings? Do you feel like you're hungry all the time? Despite your stomach feeling full, do you keep eating? Do you use food as a way to soothe yourself when you're feeling unwell or sad or emotional? Because the reality is there's people out there that, eat because they need to survive. They have no interest in food. And I wish I was that person that just ate to survive. They have no happiness or joy from food. And so this particular researcher showed that there's like a susceptibility scale. So people that are 0 on the susceptibility scale, they eat to survive. People kind of in the 3 to 4 range are people who can have moderation. So there are those people that can have 1 square of dark chocolate and a glass of wine, and that's it, right? And they feel satisfied and they're good. And then there's people like me that are 10 plus 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 plus, where 1 piece of cake is never good enough, and it when I have those things, I can feel how it soothes my brain, soothes my anxiety. But that's very short-lived, and I'm looking for the next thing, and I can never kind of soothe that craving. So, I start looking for other things to eat. So that's a little bit about my journey. I could do 100 videos about food and weight loss and addiction. But I want to say that, I think it's something we need to talk about more. And so I'd like to hear your experience with food. And if anything I've said is something that you're interested to hear more about, or if you're someone who struggles with food, and reach out and give me an idea about if you want more videos about weight loss and food. I haven't specifically told you about the program that I've done because I don't want to plug a program, because I'm not saying that the program that I did or that I do is meant for everyone. I'm very clear about that. The program that I do is very, very restrictive. Restrictive in that the boundaries are specific. And, it's really about finding what works for you, changing a lifestyle, having the support that you need, and having tools that will set you up for success so that you're not relying on willpower. And if you're wanting help with that, reach out to me. And maybe we can have, a phone call chat. So anyways, I know this video is a little bit longer than what I intended. I kind of just did it raw and real and just wanted to speak my truth and see what came out. So anyways, have a good night. And I will talk to you tomorrow for day 19. Take care. Bye, everybody. Thanks for watching.